So in this video, we're going to talk about returning to exercise. As a physio, you would think that I would do the right thing, but I'm just like you guys and become very impatient and just want to get back to previous levels of fitness. So I've actually made all the mistakes that I, as a physio, try and help my patients not to. In some ways, I need to take a lot more of my own advice. And in this video, I want to break down some of the mistakes I've made and what I think is important when starting a returning to exercise program. One of the biggest issues I had personally was because I had a very good baseline level of fitness when I was playing semi-professional football. I could make a lot of mistakes and actually get away with it because I was running a decent number of kilometers a week. I had a really good strength base. It meant that I could actually make all these mistakes during my playing days and find that I get away with it, no dramas. But what that has actually done is reinforced me to go too hard too early, and this is where at the moment, because my body's not conditioned at all, I'm finding that I'm able to pick up little niggles here and there, whether it be a bit of an Achilles, a bit of a knee. On top of that as well, after playing football for so many years, I've got so many additional injuries over the time that I've got to nurse through. So therefore, I can't spike my loads as much as someone else because my body's far more vulnerable than others. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this into three different components, which I think are the most vital. So the first component is going to be your strength component. And the way I'm going to do this is, most of us who are trying to return to exercise are generally time poor, whether that be due to work commitments, family commitments, or the like. You just don't have the hours to be able to go to the gym, go for a run, go for a swim, go for a bike. So what I want to do is pick some simple exercises that you can do at home, which is going to give you a really good baseline level of fitness, strength, and hopefully target some of the muscle groups that are most vulnerable when returning to weight-bearing exercise. The second component we're going to look at is basically running, because most of us love getting out and running. It's you're able to solve a lot of life's problems out there when you're running. So running is one component, but we know that there's a high load through the lower body when you're running, and this is where people generally fall over, have issues with all sorts of niggles from overuse. Then the third component is something that's going to be more like non-weight bearing. So whether that be your cross trainer, your bike, or swimming, it's going to be reduced weight bear, which is going to be fantastic in helping to build that baseline level of fitness. Okay, so number one, most important exercise, calf raises. And you've got two types of calf raises. You've got your bent knee and your straight leg. Now, soleus with your bent knee, a lot of people say that's your powerhouse if you're running. And we know that as we get older, we generally lose calf strength. This is part of the reason why everyone always discusses the calf injury as the old man's injury, basically. So what we're wanting to do is set yourself up. So using a wall, using a bench top, you're just going to be pushing all the way up onto your toe. So that's your bent knee. This is your straight knee, I'm sorry. So keeping that knee 100% straight, pushing up through your big toe. All right, so coming all the way up, all the way down. Second one is slightly bent, all the way up, all the way down. All the way up, all the way down. Start with sort of 3 lots of 12, but really this is got a lot of muscle endurance involved in it when you're running, so we're wanting to build those repetitions up to 20 or 30 until we are able to add weight. If you're not able to add weight to it, you're just going to have to keep on increasing those reps. It's not perfect, but it's still better than nothing. But ultimately, these are very powerful muscles, so we're actually wanting to hold a fair amount of weight in our hands or on our back as we're progressing this exercise. All right, let's look at the progression. Obviously, first progression is range, so using a step, you're wanting to push all the way up, lower all the way down off that step, all the way up, all the way down. Then you're wanting to add the dumbbell, so holding the dumbbell on the same side or same leg, you're going to push all the way up, all the way down. Like I said, realistically, for most of us, you're going to want to use a very heavy dumbbell. So we're talking 20, 30 kilos, 40 kilos as you're progressing over time. And like I said, it's important to do straight leg ones and also bent knee. All right, so next really important exercise is your single leg squat. The reason why single leg squat is so important, studies show the amount of glute medius activation. Now, Glute medius, really important, stabilizing the pelvis every step we take. So when we're running, if that hip is dropping, it can contribute to things like trochanteric bursitis. The dropping of that hip can also cause a bit of rotation through your femur, and that results in rotation of your tibia. So then that can set off runner's knee or patellofemoral joint stuff. The rotation through both of those joints can then set off things like Achilles tendonitis, because we know flat feet help to promote or are a contributing factor to Achilles tendonitis. It can put the foot in a pretty poor position, so navicular stress fractures. The list goes on. So basically, this single leg squat or single leg sit to stand that I also like is basically a stabilization exercise, but it also helps to build the strength through your quads and your glutes. Now with this, you might have to start at just 3 lots of 5, but then eventually what we're looking to do is to build that up to 3 lots of 20, 3 lots of 30. As I said previously, strength programs, you're really wanting to build strength with some extra weight and resistance to it, but we're just taking the wins that we can get, and doing something is going to be far better than not. So if you can build that up to 3 lots of 20, 3 lots of 30, you know that you've got the muscle endurance to help to control your pelvis. You also know that you've got some decent quad strength to be able to do a single leg squat, and the balance and proprioception that's also adding to the system is really important from an injury prevention perspective. All right, so next one is Nordics. Basically, Nordics generally are so much easier if you've got a partner who can hold your ankles and keep them against the floor. In this situation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kneel up against the wall. I'm going to push the balls of my feet into the wall to create a bit of friction, cross my arms, lower myself down. So I'm going to lower myself as slowly as I possibly can, try and hold that through range, and then eventually it's going to break and I'm going to fall back down. So I'm going to come down, hold, break, coming back up. Then with Nordics, where people probably go wrong, is they try and do too many reps. This is a really demanding exercise and can make you really sore. So for beginners, just start with 2 sets of 2 and try and progress to 3 lots of 5 over time, but give yourself a reasonable amount of time to recover from that. Generally, in most sporting programs, you'd also throw in an adductor exercise. So the one with the most evidence is generally your Copenhagen's, but that's not as necessary for single direction stuff. So if you're just looking to run, the strength of your groins is not as important as when you're doing multi-directional sports. But if you did have time, it is something that you should be still putting into your program, whether that be at a low end using some ball squeezes, so doing some short adductors with your knees at 90, squeezing that ball, and then with your legs out straight, doing more long with the ball between your knees. In a full rounded program, I'd still add some adductor stuff in there, because you are wanting to reduce your risk of, your osteitis and stuff like that. Now, another one that I like to add in is a reverse Nordic. The reason why for a reverse Nordic is really the quad strength. So the stronger your quads are, we know that that helps to reduce your risk of things like patellar tendonitis and patellofemoral joint stuff or runner's knee. So with a reverse Nordic, it's similar to what I just did before, but you're going to be kneeling in this position, crossing your arms, and you're going to allow yourself to come all the way back as far as you can, and then bringing yourself forward. What's going to happen is, as you get better with that, your range is going to improve. From a reps perspective, you're probably going to start with like 3 lots of 5, but over time, again, you're going to really develop some muscle endurance. So you're going to build that up to sort of 3 lots of 12. Like I've said previously though, your gym is for power. Things like running and cycling are very good at building muscle endurance as you progress those programs. So really your strength program is really targeting the power stuff. So that's why you do need weights to really add the resistance. One thing I didn't think of during my first spiel was just incorporating stretching from a rehab perspective or recovery perspective. So we know with the strength exercises that we're targeting your quads, we're also targeting your glutes, and we're targeting your calves. So obviously when you're running, when you're cycling, those same muscle groups are going to be getting worked quite significantly. So you're definitely wanting to do some quad stretches, some glute stretches and some calf stretches just to add into the recovery process. So don't forget your stretching program as well, because that's really important to help prevent injury too. Now let's go into the actual running component of the program. Now it's a real buzzword at the moment, but Zone 2 training, I'm a big promoter of Zone 2 training, especially when you're just returning into the running program. The reason why Zone 2 running is really important for me personally, I've got 2 young kids, don't get a lot of sleep. So when I get out there and run, one of the mistakes I have made is I just go out there and try and get a good session in because I don't know when my next session is going to be. When I run too hard, not only do I increase my risk of injury, but basically I used to get sick all the time. So it wasn't until I really realised the benefits of Zone 2 that running slower allowed me to get that session ticked off, whether I was tired, whether I wasn't feeling 100%, I was able to recover from that and actually not get sick, which then meant I was able to put together 2, 3, 4 pieces of exercise inside of a whole week. And then as I'm piecing those exercise sessions together month on month, then I can start to get a bit more adventurous with my program and actually feel like I'm getting somewhere with some interval work and some harder sessions. So my biggest thing here is Zone 2 is really important, and for a lot of people you might just be able to pick your Zone 2 heart rate, get out and go for your run, and be able to just start with say 1 to 2 Ks and just keep it at 1 to 2 Ks twice a week and leave it there for 6 or 7 weeks until you know that you've got that base that you can actually work from. What happens a lot of the time is people go out and go for a run, do their 2 Ks, felt good, body gets to a point where it can run further, so then they run 3 or 4 Ks and keep on progressing that distance week on week. What you're wanting to do is just to build up your chronic load over that first 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 7 weeks as that base. You want to make sure that you're recovering from that. No matter how easy that feels, just stay consistent. Just do your 2 to 3 Ks, 1 to 2 Ks, whatever you start at, just do that for 6 or 7 weeks and get that base. Other people might not be able to run 1 to 2, 1 to 3 Ks in a go. What I'd do there is I'd either go to an oval or use one of your Garmin's or your Polar watches and just set some intervals and run, do your Zone 2 for a 400 with a 50-meter walk, another Zone 2 for 400, and just build that up to that 1 to 2 Ks so that you've got the walking running load in your legs, and then we progress from there. The main thing is that you start really low, knowing that you're not going to break down barriers and build huge amounts of fitness in this initial phase. This initial phase is to get through it injury free, get into the second more exciting part of your program where you get to do some intervals in good shape, where you're not sore, you're not fighting an Achilles problem, because you've been able to build the strength in your legs that you need, you've been able to recover well by massaging and stretching and keeping up to date with that sort of stuff. Then at that 7-week mark, you're ready to go and you're ready to get some more benefits through it, but I'd still be using that Zone 2 for a big portion of that week. Everyone talks about your 80-20 principles and all of that sort of stuff. I believe that for someone returning to exercise, the main thing for you is to get into that routine again, and some days you don't feel like going hard. So having a big percentage of your week at that low intensity, it means that you might get to 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock, whatever it is when you put your kids to bed, and go, I can't really be bothered. But to be honest with you, just to jog a Zone 2 run isn't that hard. I can get out there, listen to a podcast, listen to some music, and just plod away, come back, barely have a sweat up, and you're starting to feel pretty good with yourself because you're starting to piece together those sessions. So now let's move on to your non-weight bearing exercises or your less load exercises. Now that you're running a couple times a week, you're doing strength probably a couple times a week, you're wanting to add in a little bit of extra work there where you might be doing an unloaded session once or twice a week. So with your bike stuff or your cross trainer stuff, again, I would stick to that zone 2 training. So I would just go out, start with sort of 20-30 minutes, really slow and easy. As you feel better, you're trying to build those sessions up to an hour, hour and a half, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So with your bike, basically what I find is that your zone 2 is going to be slightly lower. If you're doing on a heart rate, it's going to be lower than if you're a runner, because most of us have always been runners. We're just not conditioned to get our heart rates into the position that they need to be on the bike, because we're just not as efficient. So what that basically means is that your muscles blow out a lot quicker before your heart is reaching that zone 2 level. So we've actually got to peg back your zone 2 a little bit when you're riding on the bike. So biggest takeaways here is don't neglect your strength at the start, because strength is king. Building up the strength through your glutes, specifically the stabilizing muscles in your glutes, your quads and your calves. That's going to help to prevent most of your overuse injuries that most of us suffer as a result of it. Second component is a stretching program. Your calves are naturally going to get tighter, your quads are going to get tighter, and your glutes are going to get tighter. Those 3 things can set off things that are going to cause you, an overuse injury or the like. So basically, knuckle down and make sure, especially on that initial phase, that you're targeting your calves, targeting your quads, and it's targeting your glutes. Then when you do add your running, make sure initially you're starting with zone 2, which is really slow. You feel like you're doing nothing, but that helps to build the base and the resilience to really launch into some more interval stuff and more exciting stuff, where you get those sudden increases in your fitness level. Then make sure you're incorporating something that's non-loaded, so like a bike, a cross trainer, or some swimming, where you're probably targeting your zone 2 as well initially. And I think on the bike and swimming, it's, for me personally, I'd rather target my zone 2s doing that, because then when I get out to go and run, which is the discipline that I enjoy the most, it means I can go a little bit harder, a little bit faster, and get my sort of intensity through my running, whereas the other stuff I'm looking to just cruise around and just build a nice base to make sure that I'm ready for when I want to do my intervals. Lastly, just stay really disciplined, because if you haven't done a lot and you're going from the couch and you're getting back out there, you don't want to get sick, you don't want to get injured. You've made the choice to get out, you're going to try and stay consistent now. Consistency is easier when you don't feel like you're fighting every session. If you're going out there and you're going as hard and fast as you possibly can, they're tough sessions, and mentally it's hard to get yourself up for those. Whereas if you know that it's going to be an easy session, you're going to be able to go out and go for a cruise, well, that's easy to get yourself out of bed. So take the wins early until you really build that resilience and you really build that mental toughness to force yourself to get out and achieve the session that you want. The other thing with doing something similar to the 80-20 principle is you might have a harder session targeted for a specific day, and it just so happens that the kids don't sleep well, they're unwell, or people inside your house are unwell. Well, don't push the limit and go out and go through your hard session, because there's germs and stuff inside your house. You know that your immune system is going to be challenged at that time. It's probably better to stay running and cycling at zone 2 to make sure that you're not lowering your immune system, so that you can get through that period and not actually get sick. So change your program depending on your situation at home. I think it's really important to use all of that information to help you to write your best program for yourself. Then, like I said, as you get into that 7-week mark and you're wanting to add extra intensity, just don't get overzealous and try and go hard every single day, because realistically, your body gets better, you get fitter through the recovery days. You get fitter by the rest component. Yes, you need the stimulus to get there, but you actually have to make sure that you're getting the appropriate rest so that the stimulus can make the biggest change to your body. Best luck with it all.